Are we ready? You good? Ladies and gentlemen, an assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And for a change, I can say this is the actual World Storytelling Cafe rather than something on the virtual highway. And so this is our pre-festival open mic. The festival proper starts tomorrow. It's the third edition of the Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival. It's going to be amazing. It's going to happen here. There's going to be a big tent in the square, and it'll happen there. And on Monday afternoon, we parade from this end of the city through the souk with musicians, ambassadors, storytellers, and random individuals who just join on because there's a procession. And we take it through the souk to the square, where we reclaim the square for storytelling, because there's been storytelling on the square for 1,000 years, and it kind of got squashed. So it once for 1 week, we take it back for storytelling, and and from there will be 120 hours of non-stop storytelling, when it will be in the Guinness Book of Records. And because it's going to be in the Guinness Book of Records, they've given us rules. And part of that rules is that once a storyteller is told we've taken a break, they cannot have the same storyteller for another 4 hours. So so make sure, Keith, when you tell stories, you rattle on for about 3 hours. And then but there must always be an audience of at least 10 people. So if there are any insomniacs amongst you or where you are staying, tell them they can go down to the square. If they sit for half an hour, we will bribe them with a bowl of soup. And so that's what's going on through the week. Loads of stuff here, Henna Cafe, Cafe Clock, which was where the storytelling resuscitation got going. And but for now, we're going to go round the room with stories, or you could be an audience or tell. I'll start with a story really about the festival. When we first did this festival, I told loads of people this, that we were the first thing that happened after the borders opened, after the pestilence. And so it happened 3 days after the borders opening. So we were the first thing to happen in the whole of Africa in terms of stuff. And so we were in every newspaper and every television channel from here, through the Arab world and down to further south. And Omar, no, it wasn't. It was Ishmael. Omar was the guy who was sitting next to me right there. He was an entirely different person. Ishmael was sitting on the bus in a bus station in Essaouira, and he was about to go to his village on the edge of the Sahara. But I can't remember the name of the village. They called it the Gateway to the Sahara. And he read about our festival, and he decided he wouldn't go back to his village. He'd come to Marrakesh for the festival, and he told this story. It's a very serious story. This is supposed to be about joy, isn't it? And well-being. This is the well-being of a marcouche. Now, you won't know what a marcouche is, or some of you might not know what a marcouche is. A marcouche is a mythical bird that's probably only known down in Sahara, isn't it? Is it known, is marcouche known over the whole of Morocco?
No.
No, it's just probably in this guy's village, in Ishmael's village. Marcouche is a big mythical bird. And the main character is not Marcouche. The Marcouche comes in after the beginning, as is traditional story. The story is about a chicken, and there was a chicken. This is way back in time when my hair was dark, my beard was ginger, and all the teeth were beyond. And there was chicken, and it made a little nest, and it laid some eggs. And the eggs were nearly ready to hatch when the chicken thought, there's something I haven't done. I think I'll pop off and do it. It'll only take a minute. Nothing can happen in a minute. Well, the little chicken came back. The eggs had hatched, and sitting on her nest, an enormous marcouche. Said, it's very polite chicken. Said, excuse me, do you mind moving aside so I can look after my chicks? Now, chicks is a word that repeats through the story. And those with an NVQ level 2 in audience will know you shout that when it comes up. And the marquise said, not at all, not at all. If you go to the cow and get me some butter. So the chicken went to the cow and said, excuse me, can I have some butter to give the marquise? The marquise moved aside and get off my nest and I can look after my chicks.
Chicks.
Chicks. Chicks. Chick they hatch.
I like that.
There's a process.
This that bit.
There's a process. Okay. So chicks.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I've worked with you before.
It's more just down.
Always happen. So anyway, the cow says, not at all, not at all. If you go to the alfalfa field and get me some alfalfa. Now, when I'm in schools in England, I have to explain what alfalfa is. It's what cattle eat in North Africa and hipsters eat in Chelsea with their salad. So she went down, I said, excuse me, couldn't you give me some alfalfa to give it to the cow give me some butter, give butter, my cushion move aside, and I can look after my
Chicks. Chicks.
It's not around.
It's not rehearsed. Always is unrehearsed.
So the alfalfa said, not at all, not at all, but it's really dry. Could you get some water? Can you go to the canal and get me some water? And do you want to collect those things?
Yes, please.
Do you want to interrupt my story? Come into here. I don't mind. Oh, you know, I'm only performing here. Don't worry. No, come in. So come in. You might as well interrupt me as anyone else. Right. It's okay. No one's done it. Don't worry. Yeah, no, we've got the canal. So you went to the canal. The canal said, Canal, can you walk the canal, the alfalfa, get the alfalfa, the cow gives butter, get the butter, marcouche move side, and I can look after my
Chicks.
The canal said, yeah, but it's really dirty here. Could you get the workers to clean it? So what the workers couldn't clean the canal, water the alfalfa, get the alfalfa, the cow give me butter, get the butter, marcouche move aside, and I can look after my
Chicks.
The work said, yeah, it's really boring here. Can you get the dancers to dance for us? It's my favourite bit of the story. I love the idea of workers' rights. You need dancers to entertain you while you work. So they went to the dancers can dance for workers clean the canal, walk the alfalfa, get the alfalfa, the cow give me some butter, get the button, marcouche move aside, and I can look after my
Chicks.
The dancers, yeah, it was really stony down by the canal. Could you get the shoemaker to make some shoes? So she went to shoemaker, said, shoemaker can make some shoes. The dancers, the workers clean the canal, walk the alfalfa, get the alfalfa, the cow give me some butter, give the butter the marcouche will move aside, and I can look after my
Chicks.
Shoemaker said, yeah, but I'm really hungry. Could you go to the party down the road and get me some chili couscous? Now, Ishmael was very concerned that it should be chili couscous. So, went to the party. Said, excuse me, can I have some chili couscous to give to the shoemaker? The shoemaker makes some shoes. The dancers dance, the workers clean the canal, water the alfalfa, get the alfalfa, the cow give me some butter, get the butter, marcouche move aside, and I can look after my
Chicks.
Who's Paul Chivers? Is he trying to get in? We're not doing this on gallery, are we? This is just a broadcast out. It's not a participation thing from the world. Anyway. Do you feel refreshed? Perfect. Right, anyway, where was I? I was at a party. You always get this at a party, don't you? You forget where you are. It's a good party. Anyway, so they said, yeah, but we got no wood for the fire to heat the chili couscous. Could you go and get some wood? Yeah, so she went to all her chicken friends. And because it's a Moroccan story, it's got a bit of wisdom in it. And this is the wisdom of cooperation. And so she said, could you get some wood for the fire to heat the chili couscous at the party? So the chili couscous being the shoemaker will make some shoes for the dancers will dance for the workers will clean the canal will walk the alfalfa, give the alfalfa to the cow give me some butter, I'll give the butler Marcusha move aside, and at last I'll be able to look after my
Chicks.
Now, at this point, you'll be really relieved to know every one of those chickens took one piece of wood and took it to the party. You get the prize. No, that's what you were supposed to do. Where they heated what kind of couscous? Which was given to the who made some for the who danced for the
Workers,
who cleaned the
canal,
that watered the
alfalfa,
they gave the alfalfa to the
cow,
cow gave us some
Butter.
you gave the butter to the who said you took the time. The Marcouche moved aside, and at last she could look after her
chicks.
Hooray.
I might not have someone who's just eating. Let's look around the room. Do come in. There's plenty of room. You can sit on the ceiling.
Oh, really?
No, there's well, depends how high. There's a seat there. There's a seat there. Do come in.
Do they serve food up here as well?
Yes.
There you go. You have to order first, and then
Oh, okay.
they'll come up.
Thank you.
Yes. Right, that was convenient. There was a break at that point. I didn't have to interrupt anyone's story. You know, especially Marie. Marie, you're on your phone. You want to tell the story?
I can. A
That
short
would be-
one.
Yeah. Marie, she from the United States of America. The
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, I could tell a story about my travels here, where I left from Cebu 2 days ago and flew to Manila. From Manila, of course, after a very long layover, I flew to Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur, I had a very, very long layover. And then I flew to Doha. Doha, I had a very, very long layover. And then I finally got here. Well, guess what? I had to come to Marrakesh from Casablanca, and I didn't know where I was going. Uh-oh. What was I gonna do? Well, I knew there was a storytelling cafe, and I knew I had to get here somehow. So there happens to be a train from the airport to Casablanca, got a taxi, got somebody to help carry my heavy luggage. And I reached the storytelling cafe, and here I am. So 2 days, more than 2 days to get here, but here I am. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a little tired, so I'm gonna tell you a very short story. And because we are in the Middle East, kind of Middle East, this is North Africa, we're kind of in this region. I'm gonna tell an old story. from Baghdad. So I'll take you to Baghdad. Long ago, when there were sultans and harems and gardens, and it was a paradise. There was a merchant, a very rich merchant, and he had a servant that he had from the time he was a little boy. They were very devoted to each other. He and Muhammad loved each other. Well, one day Muhammad went into the marketplace and he was wandering around. He had to do his shopping, and all of a sudden he saw an old crone come out of a tent. And she looked at him and she pointed. And Muhammad knew who it was. It was the devil. And she was threatening him. He ran home as quickly as he could. And he said, Master, Master, I was just in the marketplace and I saw death and she threatened me. Please send me away. Anywhere, please. Well, his merchant, he loved him very much. And he said, you know, I got some business in Samara. Why don't you take my horse, race to Samara, and do my business? He did. Muhammad jumped on the horse. He raced to Samara, and the merchant went to the marketplace. He looked around and he saw the crone. Well, he wasn't afraid. He went up to the crone and he said, excuse me, I just want to know, why did you threaten my servant Muhammad this morning? Death was very surprised. He said, threaten him? Oh no, I was not threatening him. You see, I was surprised to see him here because we had an appointment in Samara.
Now, I think as you had Muhammad in that story, it's only right that we should follow with a story from Muhammad.
So I'm going to try the attention sheet. The robot.
Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. So it goes, so it records and
Yes.
goes into that.
Watching my voice.
Yes.
This, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
With my hand. Okay.
You look very beautiful.
Thank you. So I was trying to tell you a story about a nog. What is a nog? So once upon a time, there lived two brothers. A sister named Hidri and a brother named Ayur. They lived peacefully with their father and mother. Their father worked as a woodcutter. He would go every day to the forest beside the river and cut wood. This is how they sustained and lived. One day, their father, Ahmed, went, as always, cutting wood. Tock, 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 tock. But as he raised his eyes, he could not believe what he saw. A lion! And perhaps it is the famous lion, Og. He was so intimidated that he shrieked. The lion approached him and said, you old man, I'll give you two choices. I will eat you now, or I will eat your whole family. You know, Og was a very experienced master. He knew the whole village. So Ahmed said, you know, I'm old. My meat is not that fresh. It's not that delicious. You could wait till my son Idris and Ayur are going to bring me some food. You can eat them both and leave me. Their meat is delicious, and they're still young. My meat, if you chew it, your teeth are going to break down. That's a very good idea. So that's what he did. Ahmed continues cutting wood. Bak, tak, bak, tak. So as Ahmed was cutting wood, this time Ahmed, and let's try to cut some wood. He say bak.
Tak,
What do you say?
tak,
I say bak,
tak,
bak,
tak,
bak,
tak,
bak.
tak.
Okay. And the children arrived. Dad, here's your food. The lion was happy. Finally, I'm going to eat two children. I might trick them. I'm going to eat him also. You can never trust all. So, while Ahmed was cutting wood, he was doing the cut. He was thinking about a way to save himself and his children. So he had a trap with which he used to hunt rabbits. It had a little stick and a bigger piece of wood that if you remove the stick, it catches the prey. So Ahmed asked the lion, "Oh, he says, please, sir, if you could just hand me your hand and help me close this. I'm too old. I can't really do it. So Og tried to help the man, and Ahmed removed it and his hand was stuck. Og was tricked. Ahmed and his sons were saved. And for their surprise, the Og has brought a prey. And the legend said that if you eat a prey from which Og had eaten before, you become a saint and a strong person in the village. And since that day, they lived all in peace, with power respected and rich, and they became saints in the region and age. And this is my story. Thank you so much.
You came a couple of miles to get here. We've got a couple of people from that really big island, south, in the southern hemisphere. So we've got a couple of people from Oz, and so Abita.
Choices, which one of the stories? Now, let me tell you first, it does have a joyful ending, okay? So, it is more along the side of a healing story. I am possibly going to tell this more than once, but not to the same people. It's very dear to me. The story came to me a few years ago. It had nothing to do with what's going on in the world then, but without further ado, Isaiah Nasakaranu, Isaiah Nasakaranu, Askarat Nikazun, Kazun Kalida. In this world, near and far, you find fences and walls, some of which you can climb over, some peek over, some dig under, or just walk around. But some walls you cannot see. People say them. We feel them. So please come with your generous hearts and your imagination with me, far, far away. In another place, there was an old wall. It went this way and it went that way. No one knew who had built the wall, but I can tell you something. Everybody was quite sure what that wall was there for. It was to keep people apart. It was said that anyone who ever went to the other side never came back the same or at all. It was said not to trade, not to talk to people, not to marry them, not to eat their food, because they had a different language, a different culture, and they're just not like us. You must not mingle with the people from the other side. Now, ancient walls like these, of course, over the many, many years and decades, they get cracks and they get gaps and they get holes through which someone could take a peek. But people didn't do that, of course, did they? There were laws
There were very strong laws about what would happen if any one of you should dare to come and talk to someone of the other side, because it had always been so and it always will be. Did people obey those laws? Oh yeah, they did. Except, alas, thank Allah and God and the universe for children. Amir was playing near the wall with his ball that his grandfather had lovingly fashioned out of goat skins. He was throwing it and catching it and throwing it and catching it and throwing it until suddenly, bumpity bumpity bump, that ball fell on the floor and rolled through a gap to the other side. Oh no, Amir was stricken. What was he going to do? And as he bent down to look through, he saw on the other side a young girl. She was picking flowers and dancing while she sang. She saw movement. She saw the ball. She went down on her knees and she looked through and she went, "Hi!" Amir fell off his bottom. He was so frightened. But then he said, my ball, it's mine. Give it to me. Well, the young lass, she picked up that ball and she spun it. She was very good. On her finger, and guess what she did? She said, "Come get it." Amir looked left, Amir looked right, Amir looked over his shoulders, and then he squeezed himself to go to the other side. And so began a beautiful friendship. Rani the girl and Amir the boy, they would meet every day. They would share stories, they would play. And by they found out they had so much in common. They both had very similar chores at home. They both loved flowers. And the best food in the world was cooked by their grandmothers. They realized that they both loved and prayed for peace every night. Another thing they shared was Pesciol, the brothers. And it was one of them that caught the children. It was Rani's brother. When he saw that boy from the other side, he raced up to him and said, "How dare you be over here on our side? Go back to where you came from. You have nothing to do here." And he grabbed his young sister and walked off with her. So much noise did he make that Amir's mother, coming back from market, heard a commotion and walked closer to the wall and saw none other than her own son crawl from the other side with a firm hand. She took him by the shoulder and took him home. Now, my dear friends, that night on both sides of the wall, there was a great scolding. You were told not to go to the other side. You know the laws. We don't do that. We don't go there. How could you? Well, Rani said, "Why?" Amir said, "Why not? We are friends. We're so much the same." And very interestingly, on both sides of the wall, in both houses, people said, the grown-ups, because it's always been so, and it always will. Come on, let's do it again. Because it's always been so, and it always will be. Well, Rani pleaded, Amir begged, but those children were told to never go to that gap in the wall again. Did those children obey? Yes, they did. They were good children. But no one had talked about the big olive tree that was a bit further down, which had branches that grew to this side of the wall and to that side of the wall. So the children again met every day. Amir would sit on his side of the wall and Rani on the other side. And so they kept playing and sharing. This time, both brothers had followed them and they saw them. And there was a screaming. There was a shouting. "What are you doing? You children know you're forbidden to play with each other. Come on down right now." Why? Said the children. Because it's always been so, and it always will be. Now get down. So much noise they made that the elders and the people from both villages came closer, and it didn't take too long that they started hurling rocks and abusing each other. Come on, two sides.
Okay.
It was terrible. Until Amir's father said to the elder, I think we need to solve this. And the elder said, yes. A bit further down, a few yards, the wall has fallen down a bit. We should meet there, both villages. And there they sat. Can you imagine, in a grim semicircle on each side, glowering at each other? Oh, glowering. And then Rani's father got up and he said, we cannot let our children break our ancient laws. And from up there, the children said, why not? We have friends. We are so much the same. And of course, on both sides of the villages, there was a chorus of. Well, come on down, said Amir's brother. Come on down, said Rani's brother. The children by now were quite frightened, and they said, no, we won't. We want to be friends. Well, if you're not coming down, said Amir's brother, I'm going to come and shake you down. And Rani's brother did the same. They started to climb up. The children were really scared. They climbed higher up, and they clung onto these branches. Now, the villagers who were able, they came and started wanting to shake that tree too. Get these children down. The children climbed higher and higher. They held on until suddenly the branch, someone made a big crack, please. And both children fell into the dust to the ground. And just like you said, the hands went on hearts, hands went to faces. And a heavy silence descended on both sides. Old villagers. Two mothers raced forward. But Rani got up and shouted, stop! Stop! Look! She said. Her hand was really graced. Look! Red blood! My blood! And then she went over and she helped a dazed Amir up. He had a huge gash and he had blood running down into his eye. She said, he's hurt. He is bleeding. His blood is red. And so is mine. The mothers cried. And Amir went up to Rani's mother. And with a gentle finger, he picked up a tear. Then he walked over to his own mother. Then he walked back and he held those tears out like this, and they just hung. And he said, tears, silver tears, yours and mine. Look at you with your hands on your hearts. Look at you, worried about us. Look at our red blood, our silver tears. We are so much the same. And he went and embraced Rani's mother. And both mothers and children embraced. And let me tell you something, my beautiful friends. That evening, a lot more tears were shed at that wall. But there were tears of joy, tears of harmony, and tears of peace.
Right. Because he's close, and I've got to give him a turn. Kate.
Right,
Oh,
a turn. I would like to say. Sorry, I forget this. Yes. We are going to Egypt. We are going to Egypt in ancient times, but not the Egypt of Ramesses and Nefertiti. but in a small village called Comhamak. Big thriving town now, but then very small place. Now imagine, if you will, a village square with a stone bench and a fountain in the middle and a row of shops. And we know those shops that set out their vegetables in beautiful colours, and they sell fabric and they sell meat and they sell everything you can imagine. And the shops have open fronts. And the shopkeepers are outside in the morning putting out their wares. And there is a figure sitting on the bench with a long black robe with a hood. And it is a blisteringly hot day. And a woman walks into the square, a woman of mature years. And she looks across the square and she wipes her brow and she sees this man in a long black robe and a hood in this heat. And she is curious and she walks towards him. And as he looks up from under the hood, she sees those red eyes. For this is Iblis. And in Egypt, Iblis is the devil. And he has a long face and he is looking grumpy. And the woman is bold and she says, Iblis, Iblis, master of the world, who can contain anything. You are looking grumpy. Why are you looking grumpy? And he looks at her and scowls and he said, in this place I have caused wars. I have set husbands against wives. I set brother against sister. I set children against their parents. I've sent dogs against their owners, cats against everybody. There has been complete chaos apart from that man. And he points across the square. And there, the man who sells those beautiful fabrics is hanging them over a rail outside the shop, and he is whistling to himself. He is whistling to himself, and he has a smile of contentment, because he, as far as he is concerned, is the happiest man in the world. His wife is at home in his lovely house with a blue door. And when he goes home after the day's work, he will open the door, have his dinner, sit down, drink mint tea, then share a meal with his wife. What could be better? And Iblis is scowling. So, says the woman, there is nothing you can do to part them. I could. Iblis looks up sharp. Let me show you, she says. She goes home and she washes puts on her finest dress and perfume and is a little more upright perhaps. But she walks into the square, fine lady, and she walks into the man's shop. It is immediately shown to a couch and bought some mint tea. She tells him what she wants. She wants the finest yellow silk he has. And he begins to get his assistant to bring down bolts of silk. And she looks at each one and then she lights on one which is perfect. It's perfect. And he cuts off, he measures it off in the normal way, nose to tip, nose to tip. And he cuts an amount, wraps it in tissue paper and hands it over to her. And she looks up with a stern, angry face. And in his surprise, she has chosen exactly what she wants. And here she sits with a stern, angry face. And her hand is shaking slightly as she drinks her mint tea. So much so that a small drop drops onto the corner. The shopkeeper is confused and he says, Madam, is it not perfect? I can change the whole thing. There is tea on the, she said, no. I'm going to make a dress from this material. So that small drop will be discarded. What I don't like is that I'm making this for my son's girlfriend. And my son's girlfriend, my son's girlfriend is a married woman. What shame he is bringing on our family. But I can do nothing. My son asked me to make his girlfriend a dress. I make his girlfriend, and she went on and on and on. And the shopkeeper was just standing there listening. She pays for the material wrapped in tissue paper. She leaves the shop. She doesn't even look across the square at the police. She leaves the shop and she walks across the square, down an alley and along a row of houses until she comes to a blue door. She knocks on the door and a young woman answers it. She says, "Oh, my dear, what a hot day. Would you mind giving me a glass of water?" Of course. And the young woman invites her in and she sits on the sofa and the young woman goes into her kitchen to fetch a glass of water. And as she does so, the woman puts a package underneath the cushion. And the young woman brings out the water and sits in a chair opposite and they have a chat and a very pleasant afternoon they make of it. And then finally she says, "Oh, I must go now." She says, "Thank you so much for the water." Okay, I promise you. Thank you so much for the meal. What a splendid girl you are. And she leaves. Now, back in the square, the day has come to the end. All the shopkeepers have closed their premises and put their goods in the back, ready for the next day. And our shopkeeper, the fabric seller, has done the same thing. And he walks across the square, down the alleyway, smiling as he goes, whistling, waiting to meet his beautiful wife. And he goes through the blue door. They smell the dinner on the hob. His wife comes out and greets him and says, "Husband, sit down. I'll bring you some tea. Dinner is almost ready." And he sits down, contented, starts to sip his tea. And then he puts the cup down on the table, and then he puts his hand down on the sofa. And there, under the cushion, is a package. He lifts the cushion and lifts the package, and it is yellow silk wrapped in tissue paper. But not only is it yellow silk wrapped in tissue paper, it's yellow silk wrapped in tissue paper with a stain of minced tea. And it begins to dawn on him. His face begins to go red. How could it be? His wonderful wife is the girlfriend of this woman's son. His wonderful wife has been unfaithful to him. How could he not have known? And here is the material the woman was going to use for the dress. In a temper, he jumps to his feet. He marches into the kitchen and he begins to accuse his wife of being unfaithful. His wife, who stands in the kitchen wondering what is happening to him. In a temper, he knocks the dish off the hob, which just crashes to the floor, and he marches upstairs and climbs into bed. His wife, bemused, clears up the mess and goes upstairs to bed. And he is fast asleep, but when she climbs in next to him, she can feel the tension. And when she wakes up in the morning, he's no longer there. She can hear him stomping about downstairs. She hears the front door slam and she winces. And as he goes down the street through the alleyway and enters the square, Iblis is sitting on a stone bench and the woman is standing there. And they watch as red-faced he walks across the square and opens his shop. No smiling and whistling today, but clenched teeth and red eyes from crying. Snaps at his assistant. And his police smiles and turns to the old woman and says, "Well done. You have achieved what I could not achieve. Well done." The woman stands and looks at Iblis and says, "Yes, but I would turn it back in a second." She clicks up. "Now," said Iblis, "now, old woman, you brag. For that man is a broken man, and he will never be able to look at his wife again." And he felt an achievement, even though he hadn't achieved it himself. And the old woman said, "Well, watch." And home again, fine clothes, and marched into the square, and marched into the fabric shop. And there he was, snapping at his assistant, taking bolt after bolt down and putting it back again, trying to make himself busy in his misery. And here, who walks through the door? But that woman from yesterday whose son, and he can hardly think of it. When she comes in, all of a fluster, she says, "I wonder if you could help me again. I feel very foolish. I would like some more of that wonderful yellow silk." And he tries to be professional and smile, but he can't. And he said, "You want some more fit? You want some more silk? You want some more silk for another dress?" And she says, "No, no, no, you won't believe what happened. What a stupid old woman I am. Yesterday, I went down the alleyway, down the street, and it was so hot. I knocked on the door, and a young woman allowed me in to give me a drink of water. What a lovely young woman. We chatted all afternoon. And guess what? When I left my package behind. His face changed from disaster to horror at his own behavior. He called to his assistant, "Serve this lady," he said, "no charge." He ran from the shop, across the square, down the alleyway, through the blue door, and his wife stood back, remembering yesterday, and he flung himself onto his knees, and he grabbed her legs, and he said, "Wife, I've been told the strangest story, and I'm so sorry." She took him by the shoulders and pulled him up, and she said, "You foolish man." And they embraced, and they were one again. Meanwhile, the old woman was nowhere to be seen. The old woman left the shop and crossed the square, but Iblis was nowhere to be seen.
Lee, have you got a tiny towel?
I've got
for
a
us?
tiny tale for all of you, but I need everyone to help me with this. Yeah, my voice is really loud, no? You need it?
No, it's for the broadcast.
Thank you. So everyone, show me hands. Wiggle your hands. And wiggle them up high, wiggle them down low to one side, to the other side. And for those of you who've not met me, my name is Durga Devi Palanisamy, but you can call me Dee. I come from a tiny little island called Singapore, and now I live in Melbourne. And one thing about me is that I love to eat. I love food, right? But I'm not a really good cook. But I do love chopping. And you're gonna help me with this one. Ready? We go. Chop, chop, choppity chop. Chop, chop, choppity chop. Chop, chop, choppity chop. Chop off the bottom, chop off the top. Chop off the bottom, chop off the bottom, chop off the top. What's in the middle? What's in the middle?
What's in the middle?
Put it in the pot.
Put it in the pot.
What's in the middle?
What's in the middle?
Put it in the pot.
Put it in the pot.
And this is how the story goes. Once upon a time, just once upon a time, not twice, not three times, just once upon a time, there was a young girl who loved. So that day she woke up and she decided she was going to make her mom's favorite fish curry. Have you had fish curry before?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's one thing about fish curry that you love? Fish, fresh fish. What else do you love?
The curry
The curry, the spices. Well, she got everything ready, and then she got her fresh fish, put it in front of her, and she went chop, 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 chop off the bottom, chop off the top. What was in the middle? Put it in the pot. Now, just as she was about to put it in the pot, she went, why we chop off the bottom and why we chop off the top? She said, well, that's the way my mom does it. And so she picks up the phone, or she washes her hands, and picks up the phone. He calls her mom and goes, Mom, you know how we make that fish curry? You chop off the bottom and you chop off the top and you throw what's in the pot. Well, why do you do that? And mom goes, well, that's the way it was. That's the way it was. That's the way it will be. Goes, well, that's the way my mom's done it. And so she picks up the phone, olden times, phone flash, and calls her grandma. And goes, Grandma, you know how you have the fish curry recipe? You chop off the bottom, you chop off the top, put the middle into the pot. Why do you do that? And Grandma goes, well, that's because that's the way it was, and that's the way it will be. That's the way my mom taught me. Now, her great grandmother lived just down the street. So she got into a car, drove down the street, knocked on the door, went in to see the great grandmother. She goes, Putty, why do you make the fish curry like that? She goes, well, when I was a little girl, we had a very small pot. If you didn't cut off the top, and did not cut off the bottom, it would not fit. The little young woman, she thought about it for a while and she went, sometimes it could be that this is what it was and this is what it will be, but sometimes we just need to know why we do some things and if it's still serving us. So I hope you enjoyed that story. I'm going to say where I got it from. So this story was gifted by Roger Jenkins, who lives in Singapore. So.
Microphone. Now, HM, do you have a short story for us? Short, petite. 3 minutes, petite story. HM is from Tunisia.
يا سادة يا مدى يدلنا ويدلكم للخير والشهادة. وأنا قريب مصاص طويل وشامخ ومزيان وبمحاد مربوع قد اشتر أزرق واشتر أحمر. أنا قبل مرة في مقر واحد من الكلام ذا المجتهدين كيفكم جاتني محاد كلام وقالت له حوالك صديقي الخلمون. قال انا مانيش صديق وعمري ما باش يكون صديق. قلت علاش؟ اش عملت لك؟ على خاطر انت تفسخ في الكتيبه اللي انا نكتب فيها ويعلم ربي قداش انا تعب فيها. قلت له يا قلم يا قلبون انا راني مفسخ كل الاغلاط والصحيح يخليه. قال اش يهمك غلاط ولا مش غلاط؟ اتلهى في روحك. غش. قلت له يكون في علمك اللي تفسيخة غلطة عندها نفس القيمة والأهمية كيف تكتب حاجة صحيحة. اطلق لما الطريق غلطة كبيرة بنت المنحان. قال لا قدكش حكيمة يا يا ممحات كلامك معقول وما عندي في مقول. انا ما زلت تكرهني. انا كيفاش يجي منه نكره لصالح غلطي يردني ما نكتب كان بالصحيح. هي خطوة هنا يا قلمو. انا راني نفسك كان غلط والصحيح نخليه. أراكم يحكي ويحكي 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 وقت لم قاعد يثبت ويشوف الممحات من جميع الشيلات. هاو يشوف هاو يشوف هاو يشوف. وانا قال لها يا ممحات شنو كنت عرفت هكا وتسليت يا خالتي مريضة. أنا مانيش مريضة، أما كل ما فسر غلطة الضحك طرت من بدني. قال لي عاد كان يكثروا الأغلاط في مشوار ضبط الملعب وما يوقع فيه حتى شيء. قال لك راه استنى أنا زيد بصيفتك رمصاص اسكي روحي نقصار نهار بعد نهار خاصة من عمايل البراية. أب قداش ماضية راهي تتغير في راسه وتبرد. هاي تبري هاي تبري لين ما عاد يوقف فيا حتى شيء. تحط شيء في بالك انا دي مسحة وما نتفارقوش وما نجموا نوروا غيرنا ونفيدوهم. كان كي نضحيوا برواحنا وفرحوا الاثنين وهما عارفين ومقتنعين بقيمة التضحية من أجل علم المعرفة. حكايتنا تعيش مع حكايات درويش.
Right. Big check if I can have the microphone. And we're I'm gonna swap with Cos, but I'm gonna bring on the next person because that just save you some time. I'm not sure whether I need to introduce them from France or Ireland or the Arctic or Mongolia or somewhere. But I know, and I've never any idea what language she's going to talk in. But and because it's going to be the compare from now on. So Fiona, you need this, which is not so we can hear you. So that's the world. You want me to sit down?
Oh, yeah. No, we're all hard to find. So I'm going to tell a story from India, which I got from French storyteller Henri Gougo, who left us last year, sadly. But here's the story. Once upon a time in India, there was a wonderful tree. It was so big that you'd need, say, all of you here holding hands to go all around this trunk. And from the trunk grew two symmetrical branches, like two arms trying to tickle the plant. And from each of those branches grew fruit. They were big, roundish, as orange as my jumper, and they looked so juicy. But the thing about this fruit is that nobody had ever tasted them because of a legend that said that of the two branches, one bore fruit that was healthy, while the other bore fruit that was poisonous. But they did not know which was which, so they looked, but never touched. And then one year, famine came to the land. The crops were failing, the land was dry, the animals were hungry, the people were dying. And so they started seriously considering that tree because of everything else. That tree was the only thing that was still healthy looking. The fruit was still growing, still as plump looking, still as brown, still as orange. But people were afraid. So instead of trying and tasting, they tried it. Every night under the tree, people gathered and each had their different theories. Well, I noticed that the birds tend to gather on the branch on the right-hand side. No, I think the insects definitely go on the left. Anyway, they were getting nowhere with their debate. And then one day, an old man said, I'll try. I've lived a long and good life, a happy one. If I can do something for the good of my community, I will. So the man went towards the branch on, we'll call it the right-hand side. There's many perspectives on that tree. And he picked one of the fruits. Took a little moment and looked at everyone, beaten fruits. People were waiting, holding their breath. What was going to happen? Was he going to get sick? Was he going to hold his stomach? Was he going to collapse? But nothing of the sort. He was there, standing and breathing. After a while, he said, "It's delicious! It's delicious, it's juicy, it's sweet. Come on, eat!" And so little by little, the bravest first, and then everybody, they went to that branch on the right-hand side and they picked the fruit, ate into it. And the miraculous thing was that not only they were still alive after eating the fruit, but as soon as they picked one, another one started growing in its place. And so there was joy around the tree, there was joy in the village, and people came up with loads of different ways of eating that fruit. There were some that liked to eat it whole, some that liked to remove the skin, some that liked to slice it, some mash it, some cook it. They were good. But such is the nature of the human brain that when one worry disappears, you tend to find another one. So instead of worrying about their hunger, people started to worry about the fruit on the other branch. Well, what would happen if one day one of ye, my neighbors, was angry with me and wanted revenge? What if one of our children, by mistake, grabbed the fruit from the wrong branch? And soon they agreed. We need to get rid of the branch. We need to cut the branch on the left-hand side. And so convinced of the goodness of their decision, everybody came with whatever tool they had. Some had little hatchets, some had saws, some had knives, and everybody, the whole village, they started hacking at that branch on the left-hand side. Until eventually, under all their blows, it fell. And with it, the fruits and the leaves and everything, and there was a big cloud of dust, and people went, "Hooray!" and clapped and danced the whole night long around the dead branch. And then they went to bed, and they slept soundly, sure that any danger had left the village. Now, the next morning, when people woke up, when they got out of their houses, they saw with horror that all the fruit from the branch on the right-hand side had fallen down on the ground and were rotting in the dust. All the leaves had shriveled. The bark of the tree had gone black. Amputated from its bad side, the tree was dying. Lights and shadows are found side by side in nature. Poisons and remedies. And they say it's the same inside us. But maybe without our darkness, our light wouldn't shine as bright.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cosmo from the UK, good friend of John's here. I'm just going to compare and just get people on who might want to say a story, so do let yourselves be known to me. Otherwise, I'll just keep it. Whoever it lands on, you'll get to tell a story. Except for you, you'll get to guess. Unless you've got a story. Everyone's got a story. Yes, I'm sure you have. I'll do a very brief story. Part of my family are Greek Cypriot, so this is from our story from our culture. Thousands of years ago, we all heard of Alexander the Great, Parthenon, which is on the top of the hill outside Athens, which was where the Greeks would meet and discuss issues of state. Outside of this building, there was a barrel. Somebody lived in that barrel, somebody called Diogenes. Some of you may have heard of this character. And news spread fast. The man that lived outside the Parthenon in the barrel called Diogenes. It was said that he was a very wise man, that anybody that approached him from the town Athens below, from parliamentarians and something on, from the advisors to the king, would always get the most sound advice from Diogenes. Advice that they could use and always seemed to be helping the Greek people. News spread fast, and Alexander the Great heard of this man Diogenes. He heard what amazing things he'd been doing with the Greek people. So he took it upon himself, took his retinue, and travelled down from Macedonia, reached Papillon, went up the hill, and there in the barrel, lying down during the Greek sun, was Diogenes. Diogenes approached him, introduced himself. Said, Diogenes, for many years now you've been imparting your wisdom to the Greek people. You've been helping people, no matter to which class they came, no matter what the question, you appear to have an answer for them. I cannot thank you enough. He said, because of that, he began Diogenes, some baby in the sun. He said, I would like to offer you anything that you want. It's great. Diogenes looked up, smiled, and said, could you just move to the left? Who would like to tell a story? No. Well, actually, because I know your name.
And it's Donald.
Donald. I'm pretty right, John.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
you've got a great memory.
Plenty remember the name.
Ah, so I can say that, right? Double that.
It's very in a minute. Where you want to let's put it on there.
Okay.
There you go. Cool.
Lovely, thank you.
Donald, everyone.
Hi there.
From Scotland.
From Scotland, yes. And I'm going to tell you a story about a pond. There was a pond in a field. Not a big pond, but it was a pond. And in this pond lived 2 ducks. The ducks had lived in this pond for a long time. But the weather, it was a summer, it's getting hotter, hotter and hotter. There was no rain for weeks and the pond was drying up. And one duck said to the other duck, we need to do something about this. We've got no water. We've no water left to swim in. We have to find somewhere else to live. We must find more water. Yeah, said the first duck, we do. And then they heard the voice behind them saying, what about me? What about me? Looked down, and there was Frog, because there was a frog that lived in the pond as well. And this frog was always complaining. This frog was never happy about anything at all. And one duck said to the other duck, we can't just leave Frog here, that would be kind. And other duck said, yeah, but he's always about everything. Yeah, but come on. Okay, but what are we going to do? We can fly, we can't take Frog with us. And first duck said, I have a plan. What we'll do is tomorrow we'll get a stick. And you hold one end in your bill, your beak, and I'll hold the other end, and Frog can hang on. And we can fly off and take Frog with us. Great idea, said other duck. So the next morning, they took a stick. And one duck took it in his beak, and the other duck took it on its beak and said, right, Frog, hop on. Frog said, that stick's a bit dirty. Just get on the stick. Okay, Frog, held on to the stick. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. And they spread their wings and they flew. And they flew and they flew. Frog holding on tightly. And they hadn't gone far, but Frog said, have you ever been on a journey with children on the back of, in the back of the car. And you've not gone far, and the children say,
I mean, really,
I'll be there yet, I'll be nearly there yet, my arms are getting tired. Really, don't worry. Oh, come on, please, honey. We can fly faster, come on. If you've seen any water there, my hands are so sore. Oh, oh. And one duck nodded to the other. And they went down and they landed. And Frog said, oh, are we at water? And the duck said, no, we're not at water, we just landed because you're complaining, your arms are tired, you know, and we're not going to get far if you keep complaining. He said, my arms are so sore. And one duck said, if I take the stick in my beak, you, other duck, take in your beak, and you, Frog, hold on to your knife. Frog said, okay, but I hope it's not far because one time one and they said, shut up, you got on the stick. So one duck took the stick in its beak, and the other duck took the other end of the stick in its beak, and Frog held on to its knife. And you started to fly. And we went one far, from Frog to, oh, you know that? Splat. That goes to show sometimes it's best to keep your mouth shut.
Thank you, Donald.
That's a lesson I've never learned. Sorry.
So we had a name was going to tell us a story. I believe. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm Naima, a British Moroccan writer and poet, and I'm going to share a piece with you today, which I suppose touches on the theme of joy and healing found in this beautiful country. The road to Merzouga, weaving and ascending, weaving and bending. La ilaha illallah echoes from afar. The squat palm trees that sprout, green feathered fountains, the dug trenches and abandoned tools on the floor. As arduous labor stops to heed the call of Zor, an aqua sky serenely welcomes formidable mountains, mechanical beetle rising and falling. Amazigh colors flicker past the eye, a patchwork of the fruitful and bone dry, lethargic dogs in the shade, leisurely snoring. The simmering streets of Ouarzazate, freshwater streams, Itben Heddu, Daddy's Gorge, in the valley, Kidali, flanked by clay monoliths, clear water gushes from its seat, and we lean in to wet our lips. Still, the road ahead pushes into a horizon of gold, brilliant blue, the sun's sear shimmer like a fine spun bridal veil, delicately complementing a fiery stare without singe or tear, blushing gold and opaque, trailing into the braised air. The groom in an indigo head wrap waits by the aisle. Rotund women in billowing cotton robes with small children wind through parched fields where a relentless life still yields tufts of dehydrated defiance, barren brown and evergreen, an intrepid explorer, relinquishing the hours of the day, forging through the rock and dust, incalescent stews, life's lust, postcards of natural splendor, bathe in sumptuous rays, in the desert, an accompaniment of shadow camels on the way to camp, sprouting emerald, where life still flowers as the black beetle scurry and scour for droppings, where quad bikes and jeeps leave swirling patterned stamps, silhouettes reach out to greet the setting sun as camp tents welcome the heat-glazed caravan, delivered prosperant in kinship, whose autumn wrapped in the throng of the Derbuka Gumbri strum, and the night is 1,000 eyes, all blinking and winking. The flames cleave into the blackness like orange tongues. The mint tea pours freely, coolly, coating the tongue, untethered from the pressures which keep us silently sinking. I dived into the desert, ringed by dusty dunes, shifting sands, sagely edging into infinity. I gazed into the eye, and she warmly beheld me, a tranquil, tabulous sea, ebbing away, wreck's ruin, living and thriving, releasing and arriving. The magic Sahara seductively seeps, lays me softer, lighter to sleep. Thank you.
What's your name?
Eleanor,
This is Eleanor.
will this make a noise on the microphone?
Possibly, yeah. Very good. Take me there.
Okay.
Here we are, Eleanor. Oops, I'm sorry about that.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I first heard this story driving on an isolated road on the west coast of Newfoundland, which is a very large island off the east coast of Canada. And I worked for the public libraries, and it was my job to drive on isolated roads all times of the year, where I never saw another car and had to worry about moose. And I heard the story coming out of the cassette player in the library jam. And it was the voice of a lovely storyteller who moved from Ulster to Toronto to be the children's librarian. And so there on a moonlit night, all alone on an isolated road, I heard this Irish story. And it starts like many Irish stories, that once upon a time there was a poor widow woman. There are a lot of those in Irish stories. And she had 3 daughters. One day, the oldest daughter came to her. She said, "Mother, bake me a bannock, cut me a collop, for I'm off to seek my fortune." So her mother baked her some bread, and she cut some meat. And she offered it to the girl. And she said, here's what I have to offer you. Will you take half of it with my blessing? Or do you want all of it with my curse? And the girl said, oh, mother, there's not enough here to keep a mouse alive. I'll take my chances on the curse. So off went the oldest daughter down the road. She walked and walked and walked. And when it was about noon, she began to feel hungry. She saw an old log sitting by the side of the road. She sat down, she took out her bag and took the food out of it. And along came an old woman, all long gray hair, walking along, came up to her and she said, my dear, could you share a little bit of your lunch with me? Share my lunch with you? There's hardly enough here for me. Be off with you. So the old woman walked down the road, looking a little disappointed. The girl continued on her way down the road, and as the sun began to set, she realized she was going to have to find a place to stay tonight. And there just happened to be a little cottage by the side of the road. So she stopped, she knocked on the door. When the woman of the house answered it, the girl asked for lodging, and she said, well, of course you can stay here. And by the way, if you would watch over the corpse of my son, which is over in the next room, in the morning I will give you a spade full of silver and a shovel full of gold. And the girl said, yes, I think I could do that. So she was shown into a room, and there was the corpse stretched out on the table. It was a bare room with just a fireplace. The girl sat down in the corner and she watched. She watched. She watched. And round about midnight, upset, that corpse looked at her and said, all alone, fair maid, all alone. She couldn't get a word out. Her tongue got in the way. She couldn't breathe. And the corpse watched her, went toward her, tapped her on the shoulder. And instantly she was turned into a flagstone on the floor. And that was that for her. Time passed. The second daughter came to her mother and she said, Mother, bake me a bannock and cut me a collar, for I'm not to seek my fortune. So her mother prepared the bread and the meat and she offered it to her. She said, now here, this is what I have to offer you. Would you like to take half of it with my blessing or all of it with my curse? Oh, mother, you can't be serious. There's not enough to keep me here going half a day. I'll take the whole thing. Well, she went. Can't say for sure whether her mother cursed her or not, but well, she went. And wouldn't you believe it? But the same time of day, the sun overhead, she came to the same log and sat down. Took out her lunch. And of course, she knows what happened next. Along came the old woman. She said, oh, no, just share your lunch. Share some of my lunch with you. Oh, the nerve of you, off with you. The girl continued on down the road, and as the sun began to set, there were no reasks. She began to look for a place to stay. And there was the self-same house. She knocked on the door. The woman at the house answered. When the girl asked for a safe place to stay for the night, she said, of course, that's what we're doing here. But if you would watch over the corpse of my son in the next room, in the morning I'll give you a spade full of silver and a shovel full of gold. And the girl said, I'm sure I could do that. She was shown into the room and she sat down in the corner. Oh, she sat and watched. She sat and watched. She sat and watched. And it really upset the corpse and walked toward her. Oh, he walked from the table down. Oh, all alone, fair maid, all alone. And she went, oh, and without another word of warning, the corpse did reach out to her again, to her machine. And she was turning into still. And that was that. Meanwhile, who's left? the youngest daughter, often called by some people the least daughter. The least daughter came to her mother and she said, "Mother, I guess it's time for me to go see to my coach. Would you bake me a bannock and cut me a collar?" And her mother said, "Of course." She prepared the food. She held it out to her daughter and said, "This is all I can give you. Would you like half of it with my blessing or all of it with my curse?" And he goes, "Oh, mother, I must have your blessing." He smiled and gave her the whole thing anyway. She's just, well, she was just, you know, always. The girl took all the food, went down the road, and the exact same thing happened. When the sun was high overhead, she was at the same log and she sat there. And of course, as she began to take out her food, along came that old woman. She says, "Young woman, do you spare a little bit of your lunch?" "Well, of course I can. It's little that I have, but you're welcome to half of it." The old woman sat down on the log next to her, and they shared the food. They began to talk. Perhaps they told a story or two. I wouldn't be at all surprised. Maybe they even sang a song. And then the old woman got up. She stood up. She seemed much straighter than she had before. She said to the girl, "Now, wherever you go, whatever you do, I'll be watching out for you." And she went. Down the road went the girl. And of course, as the sun began to set, there she was at the same house. She knocked on the door, and the house answered. She asked for hospitality and was given. And the woman said, "Well, if you will watch over the corpse of my son in the next room, in the morning I'll give you a spade full of silver and a shovel of bacon." There said, "Yes, she can do that." She was shown into that room. There was a fire burning in the fireplace. And the woman at the house brought her some nuts and some apples. She sat down by the hearth and began to crack the nuts and eat the apple. And in came the cat and the dog and sat down beside her. She sat there for quite a while and amused herself with the cat and the dog. And at exactly midnight, up jumped the corpse. It went straight at her. It said, "All alone, fair maiden." "All alone, I know. I've apples to roast and nuts to crack, and here's the dog, and here's the cat. All alone, I'm not." "Well, you're a bold one," said the corpse. "You're a bold one, but you can't do what I have to do. You can't go where I have to do. I promised your mother I'd watch out for you. And watch out for you, I shall." "Well," said the corpse, "you can't go. I have to go along the road. I have to go across the boggy marsh. I have to go down through the flaming forest, and I have to go through the pit. You cannot follow me. I promised your mother." And with that, the corpse was up. He hopped out the window. The girl went out the window after him. She followed him down the road until he came to the green hill. He stopped. There was a door in the green hill. He knocked on the door and he said, open up, and let the Lord of the green hill pass through." And his lady behind him, through there he went. He was already down the road ahead of her when he came to that quaking bog marsh. She watched as he hopped easily over every little hummock and couldn't figure out what to do next. All of a sudden, there was the old woman from the road. Only now she was dressed much finer, standing forward. And she said to the girl, "I promised I'd look out for you." And she reached out and she tapped the girl's feet with her broom. And they spread out like snowshoes. She was able to hop from without getting so much as one toe back. But by the time she got across to the other side, The corpse was already far, far ahead of her, entering what she thought must be the flaming forest, but flames were leaping up into the sky. She tried to catch up with him, and when she finally got there, he disappeared into the forest, and she didn't know what she was going to do at all. And then there was the woman from the road. She placed a great woolen cape with a hood over it around it that had been moistened, and she was able to walk through the forest without singeing one hair. But by the time she got to the other forest, the other side of the forest, now ahead of her she saw strange blue lights. She heard horrible moans and groans and howls and growls coming up from the pit. She stopped, wondering what was happening. There was the old woman right beside her with cotton and wax. She shoved in her girl's ears and she didn't hear the howls and the growls and the moans and the groans, and it wasn't quite as terrifying as she thought. Down she went through the pit of terror up the other side, and there ahead was a vast mountain. The corpse turned around and looked at her and said, "You go home. You cannot go any further. Go home to my mother. You have done all you promised to do, but I have to climb that glass mountain. I have to go up onto the top and dive into the Dead Sea on the other side. You cannot follow me there." And well, she got to the bottom of the glass mountain and she started up, but it was one step up and two. Oh no, she wasn't getting very far when, fortunately, as she kept looking, there was the old woman over the road, and she tapped the girl's shoes and made them sticky on the bottom, and she easily climbed the glass mountain until she reached the plateau at the top. There was the corpse standing on the far side of the plateau, and he turned to her and says, "No, you cannot go any farther. I have to dive into the deep Dead Sea. You cannot follow." He walked toward the cliff. She matched him step by step by step. And when they got to the edge, he did not have a chance to leap out before she leapt out beside him, and they fell down, down, down into the water, and it seemed white and frothy at the top. It was then brown, and then it became blue. She lost consciousness when she arrived at the bottom, when everything seemed green. She was exhausted. She fell asleep. When she woke up, there was her head on the shoulder of the corpse. Only was no longer a corpse, but a handsome living young man. And she wasn't at the bottom of the Dead Sea. No, she was back in a feather bed in the house where she'd stopped. And there was the corpse all alive and handsome. And there was his mother. She said, "You have saved my son." He was put under a spell of enchantment by a wicked witch who wanted to marry him. And when he refused, she cast that spell on him that could not be broken until a girl came along and did everything that she did. Now, we can't thank you. We can't thank you enough. Is there anything you want? The girl thought for me. She said, "Well, I might like to see my two sisters again wherever they went." And instantly, the two sisters popped up from the flagstones they'd been on the floor and were out of there. I don't think we saw them in that story ever. You know what happened next. The young man and the young woman married. And if they did not live happily ever after, I hope that you may.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Very lovely story. I believe we have another storyteller. Yeah. This is Baden. Some of you know Baden. Hey. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, evening everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
Well, funnily enough, I couldn't have planned it better. The sea features in this story, but it's a love story of a very, very different hue. It's actually a mermaid story, which is totally uncharacteristic for me. And John was there when this story was requested and how it came to be. We were at a festival and this young lady came along and told us she was a mermaid, in spite of the obvious evidence to the contrary. Which John, being a brave man, pointed out. I decided not to go there. But I did promise her, and neither of us had a mermaid story, strangely, for similar reasons. But I promised her I would do some research overnight. And if she came back to our tent the following day and I'd found one, I would have a mermaid story for her. She didn't come back, but I found the mermaid story. Called The Mermaid of Dunnet Head. Apparently the northernmost point of Great Britain. And just off Dunnet Head, there's a rock. And on clear days when it doesn't rain, so that's twice a year, this mermaid can be seen sitting on the rock using a golden comb to comb her long, thick, dark hair. But she's known for being very shy. And at the slightest sight of a human being appearing at the cliff top and making his way or her way down towards the sea, she slips off the rock into the water and disappears. This went on for years and years and years until one day, a young lad appeared not from the cliff top on that side, but from the lesser used path, a rocky, dangerous path on the other side. Whether by design or accident, we don't know. But he was almost upon her before she realized he was there, and she turned and startled. She didn't move. And this young lad, something about him, he was charming, he was witty, he was handsome, bold, athletic. Reminds me of a younger me. How do you like that apple? And before she knew it, she was chatting and laughing with him, and they struck up a conversation, and she felt strangely relaxed. So it was no surprise when he agreed to meet with her, or she agreed to meet with him the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the day after that. She began to feel strangely attracted to him and began to bring him little tokens of her affection. Now, you see, the waters off Dunnet Head are notoriously dangerous, and many a ship come to grief there. And she would swim around in the wreckage and help herself to little trinkets like the golden comb. Meant nothing to her. She had no idea of worth or value or wealth. She just loved pretty things. So she'd amassed quite a collection of jewelry, fine objects, and all sorts of gold and silver and emeralds and diamonds and rubies and all sorts. And she'd bring him these little tokens and give them to him. He, of course, he knew their value. He knew what wealth was. So he gratefully accepted them. And even more gratefully, he gifted them to some of the young ladies from the village who were also quite smitten with him. Remember at the beginning I said, didn't I? I didn't say there was a young man. Remember what I said? There was a lad. I mean, the UK, when we say someone's a lad, well, you're beginning to get the idea. So as the days went on, his visits to her became shorter and shorter, and he became bolder and bolder. He'd walk up and say, "So, what have you got for me today then?" And once she'd handed over whatever token or trinket she'd brought, he'd quickly find a way to cut the conversation short and off you go. She didn't have the words for it. She didn't have the vocabulary. She was a mermaid. But even so, she began to notice something wasn't quite right. Yes, ladies. It seems that women's intuition also applies to mermaids. She began to question something, what she didn't know, but something. And then one day, she said to him, you know that dolphin I gave you, that pretty shiny one, could I have it back? And he was like, yeah, sure, yeah, thinking, what dolphin? And even more desperately thinking, who had he given it to get it back from? And she said, I don't want it back. Don't get me wrong, it's yours. But I found a big piece of shiny silk, shiny metal. And you know, dolphins travel in schools, I think they're called pods. I'd like to make a set of them. And I'd like that one to use as the model to make the others. Yeah, he said, no problem. I'll bring it tomorrow. She said, make sure you do. We all know what happens next. He turns up the next day. What you got for me then? And she said, did you bring the dolphin? And he was, stupid with me. I completely forgot. You know what? No problem. I'll bring it tomorrow. All the while she'd asked him the question. All the while he was talking. She never took her eyes off him. Watched him intently, as she knew in that instant. Never mind that, she said. She laid her head on his shoulder and said, the sweetest, most charming voice imaginable. You've never heard me sing, have you? That's what I was looking for. He said, no, I didn't even know you could. But she began to sing. Sweetest, softest, most lulling lullaby you could ever imagine. And in no time at all, he fell asleep. And with that, she slipped off the rock and took him down with her, down into the depths of her underwater cavern, right into the heart of a huge treasure trove, where she manacled him to a post, hand and foot, bound him there to her forever. You look shocked. My friend, that's not the worst of it. From his vantage point in that underwater cave, he could see, and this is the other irony, of course, he's right in the middle of all the treasure that he craved. From his vantage point, he could see in the distance, at the top of the hill, outline of what was once his home and which he would never get to see again. That's a love story. There you go. Got it? Okay.
Okay, I think we're coming to.
We're pretty well
Yeah.
there.
So before we go, there'll be more things here happening tomorrow. And obviously the festival starts proper tomorrow. There's a procession at 6 from this end of town right through the Soot. Last year it was, like 2 years ago, wonderful. And then we arrive at the tent, which should be up by now. Say knock knock. Who's there? Sorry. You're there. Thanks for being a great audience. This guy's going to tell us a story tomorrow, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe someone tell us a poem.
That's it. John's here. We're off. Have a lovely evening. I don't know what you're all up to.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to know what the programme is, I'm the fake star dear, I'm only the director. But the website's worldstorytellingcafe.com. Look there, hit the little festival tag, and that will come down. And then those storytellers are part of the festival. Make sure make sure you're on the WhatsApp group. I seem to have actually fallen off as admin for some reason. So I can claim no responsibility or I can claim complete irresponsibility. And and thank you very much, and everyone that told, a big round of applause for them. What's going on? What's the next open mic in here?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, what time? Me and you?
Yeah,
Again?
I think 4 o'clock.
You mean I've got to work with you again?
You have indeed.
Yeah, when is it?
It can't be 6 because you've got processions. That must
No,
be 2 or 3.
No, it's Sunday tomorrow.
It is Sunday tomorrow.
The procession's on Monday.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for those that want to know their way about, this is kind of important.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those 11 o'clock in the morning, meet here and there'll be an orientation tour around all the venues. So you won't have to guess your way through the soup. It's a big exciting thing to guess your way through the soup. I've been coming here for years and I still get lost on the first day of soup, which is what the soup was designed to do.
Sorry, it's Sunday tomorrow. It's not this.
No, it's Sunday. It's not Monday tomorrow. It's Sunday.
12 till 3. Here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
12 till
12 till
3.
3.
Open mic.
Open mic.
Yeah.
You and me.
Yeah. You and me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said that.
So
You go now.
you can go. Go away. Willie wants to. Willie, have you given his bike back?
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Who is it?